Good afternoon, everybody. John Letourneau here, Director of Commercial Operations at eXp Commercial. Thank you for joining us for our virtual mini summit today. Going to have a great time, very fast-paced, lots of good stuff covered. And then at the end of the day, we're going to leave you with a really solid action plan to take this stuff, put it into implementation, how to really rock the last 2 quarters of the year. But this is something I couldn't do on my own, of course. Need help with things like this, and no better wingman in the world, perhaps, than Goose. Next up would be Tim Rios. So Tim is our managing broker in California. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Well, we all know how it turned out for Goose, so hopefully I'll fare a little bit better today.
Yeah, that faulty ejection stuff on those F-14s, got to watch out for that. But it is better than what was in the original B-1 bomber, which was a downward ejection. So you would get launched downward. So you really had to think about it. You got minimum altitudes, or you had to literally try to roll the bomber and hopefully you shoot upwards.
That's a lot to
Whole
think
note
about.
For a different roll. But anyway, on to happier topics. Let's dig into some real estate, folks, right? So this year has really been an interesting and tumultuous year. And a lot of agents out there are kind of, maybe there's some indecision, maybe we're not sure what to do. There's legislative changes, there's debt market changes, there's segment changes. There's so many things happening out there that confusion can cause inactivity. And inactivity is a decision. I know Tim and I talk about this all the time. And it has impact. We have some slides showing you what that impact is over time in a minute. But what does 2026 look like, and what is it going to look like moving forward is really the focus of this conversation today. So I really appreciate you being here. If you're watching on YouTube, we do have the comment in the chat segment there. So if there's a question or something, we'll try our best to get to it. We have so much to cover in such a rapid series of events and time. If we don't get to it today, message me on Hub or email, and happy to get back to you with that. So in our world, Tim, we talked about this kind of like, what's the next cycle? And everyone always wants to know what the next cycle is, while kind of ignoring the last cycle sometimes, right? And you and I have laughed about this since 2005, where, well, with hindsight, everyone was right. If you get far enough away, like, oh, of course I saw that coming. But there's some people in 08 and 9 didn't quite see that coming.
Oh, I mean, yeah, 2006. I'll admit I was cashing my commission checks in 2006, even though I thought it was a little weird. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The same. I mean, the money is falling out of the sky. You just needed a big enough bucket to catch it. And 08 came along, and it was a rapid transition into like, hi, is anyone home? And you call yourself on your desk phone just to make sure your phone rings. Okay, does it work? Let's just make sure. And you count that as one of your 250 calls a week, right, Tim?
Right. No, absolutely.
It was a call. So it's really interesting. We're going to talk about what we think that market looks like, where we're headed to, and some segments and things like that. So it's going to be a really fun conversation. But let's kind of look at where we're at. So we can slide forward, please, Sarah. So starting with our macro lens, we're going to go way up on capital markets and liquidity. And this is really a fascinating one now. There's a lot of conversations around that. We'll get into some TCPA stuff, because this is one of the most significant changes to the way you prospect and will have to prospect moving forward. Onward into the hybrid broker. And this is an intriguing concept in terms of sort of efficacy of time and making sure that really you're at the cutting edge of managing your time more than anything. We don't want to bury you with technology that's not going to help, but there's some very, very smart, simple moves that you can make to really help become a much better hybrid broker. Finally, we're looking at our property sectors and then kind of form a game plan moving into 2026 and beyond, what that looks like and how to set you up for success. So that's sort of the game plan. So what they always say is, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. So we got that first part out of the way nicely, Tim. I think we're good with
Check.
that. So, Checkbox, exactly. Okay, so if we can go to our next slide, please. Let's talk about capital markets, Tim. What are you seeing out there? What are we hearing? Mortgage wall, debt wall. Oh my God, the sky is falling. I heard this back a few times. This is probably the third cycle I've heard this.
Oh yeah.
So
No,
talk to me about that.
it's a common theme. And, there's one thing I always like to point out to people with whom I work, and that is when it comes to the pundits, when it comes to people talking about what's coming in the market, you never get punished for being negative. Because if you're negative and something good happens, then everybody breathes a sigh of relief of, oh, thank heavens that wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. But if you say something positive and it doesn't happen, well, now you're a villain forever because you were wrong. So
Correct.
I always remind myself of that when I am consuming news, that the safe play for people out there is simply to be negative. Now the reality is, John, and you know this, we do have a lot of debt coming due in 2026. I wouldn't look at it as you mentioned, the wall, the sky is falling. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? There's going to be so much distress, because I don't think there's any underlying reason to assume that there's going to be massive distress. What there is going to be, which is wonderful, is there's going to be a lot of people that have to make capital decisions, whether that's refinancing, whether that's selling, and that's the opportunity that is. Look at the wave of debt coming and how much it is increased over previous years, and all the CMBS coming due. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have conversations. As you and I have talked about before, you can be a great prospector and you can not be afraid of the phone. You can get on there, and the person on the other end of the phone can love you like a son or a daughter. But if they're not facing any kind of decision or any transaction needs, it doesn't matter that they love you like that. But now we have market forces that are causing people to stand back and say, well, I have to make a decision, and who's going to be the person that's going to help them with it. So that's part of what I see coming in those capital markets. But I'm curious to hear what you think.
Well, it's what I call the Weather Channel thing, which is there's always a 10% chance of rain every day, so they're never wrong, right? Like you said, you bet on the negative and always push that out, and there always is that little bit of noise. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at a lot of these assets that are out there, people have been saying, well, there's blend, pretend, extend, and then what's going to happen? Well, number one, banks do not want troubled assets on their books. So let's start there as a fundamental baseline. So banks are much more willing to work with lenders and borrowers as they have been. Are there opportunities for this to impact you positively and your clients? Yes. And what does the trouble scenario look like? Someone who bought it maybe at top of market, at a super low cap rate with super low debt, and they never raised rents, they never bothered dealing with expenses, they just let it ride. That has potential. However, when you look at overall value appreciation and market sort of all ships rising with the tide, the past 4 years or so before they've come up, they stand a reasonably okay chance of getting close. Getting close to refi, and if they're not at full refi, they're not going to necessarily maybe be financially ruined by it, but there's opportunity there. The key, though, is from an advisory perspective, you want to be talking to them a year before they need you, right? And then we talk about pre-need awareness, Tim, and that's something that's so critical, because if I have a tax year to prepare for bringing a property to market, for example, or to refi, that's very different than saying, I got a note, I have to refi in 30 days, Tim, save me. Well, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part.
Right.
It's one thing that I've tried to teach my kids, yet it doesn't always seem to sink in. So those are out there, right? But when you look at the lenders overall, the lenders have handled this very differently than 08 or 9. There's not going to be a floodgate of, hey, Tim, we're dumping everything tomorrow. Come get 40% off at the multifamily fire sale from First Bank of Jonesville. Not happening. Let's be really clear. Not happening. Even large office buildings, which are being handed back, some of those are trading at ridiculously low numbers. Yep. And if you're an institutional player big enough to handle that, deal with that pain, and eventually come back out and redevelop, you might have an opportunity. For the average mom and pop investor, this is, I think, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Maybe not nothing, but not signifying as much as you might think it is overall. Tim, go ahead.
Well, I look at it. If we go to the next slide and look at how this is growing, I think what we don't want to take away from it is some sort of false positive, which is you will see some more distress, some more default in the market.
Absolutely.
But that's because the default and distress is never zero. And by just the law of large numbers. If you have so much more refinancing that needs to happen, then you're going to have more defaults. You're going to have more distress, not necessarily because there's been this huge spike from a percentage standpoint, but just because there's more happening. And you mentioned something that I think is really important for people to understand, and that is if you look at the last 10 years and you look at the way that lenders have been far more conservative with things like loan to value and their debt coverage ratios or debt yields or reserves and replacements above the line, stress testing the NOI. There's been so much that has been done to try to protect that collateral, to make sure that it is refinanceable. So in a lot of cases, as you mentioned before, yes, I'm going from,
I think Tim
it
locked up.
sounds catastrophic, but there's so much built in. And you mentioned that there could be landlords that maybe have had no pricing power, have not been able to move the dial in the last 10 years. Well, I would suggest to you that even if there was 3% debt out there, that landlord would still have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, if those ships have risen with that tide, I don't think refinancing is going to be a big problem. What we need to take advantage of, and of course, this will dovetail a little bit with our discussion about artificial intelligence later on, is just there's going to be so many more people. There already are so many more people that are open to having a conversation.
Correct.
I think of this, and you've heard me say this before, John. We've known each other a long time, but I often think of we as brokers like plumbers,
Mm-hmm.
in that most people don't want, unless your plumber happens to be your friend or your neighbor, people don't necessarily want to talk to their plumber every day. But when your water heater goes out, or you spring a leak, or there's some kind of a problem, you want to have somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, somebody that's going to be honest with you, has the skills to get it done, isn't going to overcharge you. I mean, there's a whole set of things you want, which is a lot to ask from a relationship that you didn't put any effort into. And so I think of us as brokers, we make calls, I don't need you, I'm not doing anything, whatever. And then we reach an inflection point like this where they need somebody that can give them good advice. So, I mean, it's just the bottom line is it's a great time to be active, because if I stick with the metaphor, there's a lot of people that have sprung a leak and need to have a good plumber on call. So it's a great time for us to be active.
Now, as a former Chicago plumber for 7 years, I have to tell you, pre-need awareness does make a difference. And if y'all got a leak, I don't have a plumbing company, so this wasn't a whole shill to call my plumbing company. Just to be really clear, it wasn't a whole 7-minute setup for Tim to point people to my plumbing outfit.
Letourneau Roto-Rooter, yeah.
There you go.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
John, I've always thought that information is great, but what's important is what do we do with it? So how do we attack these conversations? And I know there was something that you used to do quite a bit as a broker. Our roles are reversed now, but I know that there were some really creative things you used to do in reaching out to try to create those conversations. So let's give the folks that have been kind enough to tune in today, let's give them some things that they can do, ways that they can approach and start these conversations.
Absolutely. Can we slide forward, please, sir? Thank you. So, hey, Tim, I only buy 8 caps, 10 caps. I only ever buy 8 caps. So why would I buy something today at a whatever cap, right? This is a very common conversation. You and I have laughed about this for years. So this is from a prospecting perspective. If you said to someone, hey, you know what, you're facing a refinance, maybe you should bring this property to market, sell it, and then we could reinvest. Cool. Send me whatever kind of assets are out there. And you send them a bunch of stuff that's a cap rate that's nowhere near what he or she thinks they're going to achieve. Well, I only buy 8 caps, Tim. How do you answer that question looking at this graph here?
Well, this is a concept that I wish everybody understood. I think a lot of more brokers understand it than principals. And that's the question of return on equity. That person who says I only buy 8 caps. The retort, if I was a rooter person, my retort would be, so you haven't bought anything since 1998, right? It's
Exactly.
just that it's like an old colleague of John and mine used to say, so many people look at the market and it's like they're trying to drive a car only looking through the rearview mirror. The reality is, for the savvy investor, they understand that as market forces, as your NOI grows, as cap rates compress, as many different factors conspire to create higher values, they don't realize that that 8 cap that they bought 20 years ago is a 2% return on equity now. And so this, it's just this, it's this idea of, and this is mathematically, you can prove it on almost any property, is that that 8 cap you bought is a 2 cap now. So buying a 6 cap isn't all that bad. And if you're going to take advantage of the next cycle of growth, but if you think about it in a simple, I always love giving analogies, especially with private clients, because there are varying levels of sophistication in terms of how they approach real estate. But I look at it this way: if you own a stock, in a tech company, and you own 10 shares, and it goes from $10 to $100, you're going to find yourself wishing you owned 100 shares. I'd rather take advantage of that appreciation. So that 10-unit apartment building you bought in an 8 cap, throughout the next cycle, wouldn't you rather redeploy that equity into 50 units and take advantage of all those market forces for the next 10 or 20 years? But it takes, generally speaking, a skilled broker to have this conversation with somebody.
Correct. And that's where I think one of the fundamental superpowers we have in commercial is leverage, AKA debt, that you can't get in stock. You got $100,000, unless you're doing some exotic shorting and margins and stuff, you only buy X amount of stock. If I've got $100,000 and I'm buying real estate investment at 25% down, that $100,000 effectively earns $400,000 worth of property. So I've got $400,000 worth of tenants helping me pay off a $100,000 mortgage. Game on. And appreciating in value. That's the huge power of leverage that we don't, I think, stress often enough. And I know we're deep into the debt conversation here, but doing this equity statement is one of the most important things you can do when looking at investment assets like that and providing value to your clients that goes beyond, hey, do you want to buy or sell today, Tim?
Right.
And unless you can do this, and this is very easy to do, ChatGPT makes this, or AI in general, I'm not endorsing a brand, AI makes this so easy to do. Now, we had to actually do math back in the day. I pulled out my abacus, my cuneiform, my clay tablets, and chisel. I had to count on all 20 hands and toes. Like, it was hard back in the day.
John, you're a smart guy. I'm just wondering how many people caught your cuneiform reference there. The first system of the written word, John. You are a man of great depth.
I had to go back there, So what do we do with that equity statement? Well, how do we leverage that? Sarah, if we could slide forward, please. This is one of the coolest things. And what I have to tell you is twice a year, everybody I've ever closed with, whether the buy side, sell side, doesn't matter. And doesn't matter if I rep them or not, they get a love letter. That love letter looks similar to this in format. Make it how you wish to make it. Because people don't care what the property is worth nearly as much as knowing, but how much do I have sitting there? And what's it doing for me? Okay. This is a great way for you to easily go, hey, by the way, congrats on owning this. You were at closing because you went to closing like a good broker. And you know what they paid, what the income, what the NOI was like, how long the leases were, what the debt structure was. And you could easily calculate appreciation based on market value minus their down payment and what kind of growth have they had just on appreciation. And then look at how much mortgage, principal reduction was there. And helping them understand, hey, look, by the way, you got $400,000 sitting in that building. Let's talk about how we can deploy that, like Tim said, get to leverage and move that forward. Can we sell this asset? Can we refi? Can we take this out? And instead of earning, let's say this is a 6-unit building, let's go get you a 12 or a 24 and grow by scale with that $400,000, because that $400,000 might only be earning you 4 or 5% here. If we deploy it in this new asset, raise rents, work on expenses, taxes, dumpster fees, whatever, that could earn you actual real money then. So this equity statement is absolute gold. You send these in June and December, because think about this. If you have a 401k worth $20,000, they're getting monthly statements. Their advisor's calling them twice a year, like, hey, Tim, how do we get you into whatever, right? The single most expensive things people own, we as advisors, as brokers, almost never do anything like this to follow up, to show them where they are in the market until they go, hey, Tim, maybe I should sell. Hey, it's worth $2 million. You need to be doing this pre-need awareness. And when you go to list a property, by the way, it's really cool, because they'll be like, hey, Tim, here's the last 5 of these you've done. Where are we at? Oh, it's probably here and here. Cool, let's get it done. Because they've already been conditioned to the market through your previous activities. This is absolutely a powerful way. And especially if they were on the other side. We all know those agents who, you can never really say this, but if you wanted to go, Tim, every time you speak or interact in this transaction, our probability of closing goes down. So I would love for you to earn all of your commission. Just please don't come back until after closing. I'll protect your client's fiduciary responsibility to you. I won't push beyond any lines, but please just go away for a while. right? We can't do that. You have who you have in. However, after closing, that kind of broker who puts a deal under contract, ghosts out, skates in at closing, collects a check, and goes, I'm the hero of real estate. Sure you are. Those people post-closing, as long as they do not have any kind of written agreement with them, I'm not advocating sign crossing, those folks you send these letters to, all day they will become your people. I pick up orphans all the time, and this is absolutely a killer way to do that. Okay? So this
John, let me add something to this one really quickly, because there are those among us, and myself will included. I always felt that you were very bold in this way, in that you would take and you would make assumptions like this, and you would say potential net equity 435,000. There is great reticence, I think, among brokers, and not necessarily for bad reasons, but I don't want to send something out like this because I don't want them to think they've got all this money and then it turns out that it doesn't. If you're thinking that at all, part of what I would encourage you to do is you can take an approach with this that is a little bit more generic, which is to offer up an example maybe that isn't exactly their property, although it loses some of the punch that John's talking about, but offer to be able to do that analysis for them. The other thing is that what we want this kind of outreach to do is we want it to create conversations. There's always an overarching message in any real estate market, whether things are up, down, sideways, in a tornado, whatever it is, there's always exceptions to the rule. Real estate is always and will always be ultimately something that's hyper local. So what might be true for the 20 other properties in the market could not be true potentially for your property. So we use this as a jumping off point for a conversation. That's what we're trying to create. We're trying to create human conversations. So don't be afraid of being a little bit bold when it comes to this. It worked for John.
Yes, and it continues to. All right, if we can move forward, please. And so the question then too on the debt thing was, how do we find the leaks? How do we find those leaky bugs? I think Stephen Johnson put that in the chat. So thanks to our data partner CoStar, I'm going to give you two very granular ways to find potential debt opportunities. Number one, go into CoStar, pick your property type. Like in this case, we did multifamily. Okay, I just kind of hovered it over the Chicago area just to have something. I always also set, when I'm looking at multifamily, the units to 5 or greater, because 4 and under will have very high probability of having 30-year fixed debt, FHA type debt. No need to force, they're not going to be forced to the marketplace potentially. 5 and over is going to be commercial debt. So pick your property type and then go to the loan tab. And this is the most underused tab in CoStar, I think. And I still believe every tab in CoStar could be a 6-figure income. This is one of them that I think is so underutilized by so many brokers and advisors out there. So go into your loan tab, click on, does it have a loan? Yes. And it has a little button, right? The green arrow I put there that you can say expiring within the next year. Cool. In that little metro right there, there's 326 opportunities. Now, do they all need you? Nope. But are there 326 people who are going to have to make a debt decision? I like that probability. And one thing Tim told me as a wet behind the ears new broker was always build a business based on probability over possibility. And this will get you to probability. And you're like, yeah, 300 people. I don't know if that's enough for me. I'm not sure. Cool. Let's up it to round 2. So we can slide forward, please, Sarah. So round 2, because CoStar may not always pick up the maturity, but they're very good at picking up the origination of loans. So you're going to do the same thing. Go into the loan tab, multifamily, 5 units, has a loan, except here, blank out maturity date and put it on origination date and date it for, whatever, 3 to 4.5 or 5 years out, because sometimes there's 5-year debt, sometimes there's 7, there is 10-year debt out there, but this is going to get the origination date. So you have much higher probability of knowing when that loan started. Now we've got in that exact same area, 2,397 opportunities. And if you don't think you could build a business off 3,000 properties in your database, and this is just people, who are going to transact some way or another in the next 12 months, give or take, that's not a bad start. I mean, we always talk about a sustainable database being about 500 people, give or take, 500 owners. Well, even if you count those 300 as counting here, I've got 2,400 people here just with debt concerns, not to mention everybody else. So this will absolutely get you on that path to finding them. Also sending out your equity statements to your current and past owners. And I don't care if you're a buyer or seller, absolutely be on that. Okay. Can we move on one slide, please? So as we're moving through our segments, Let's talk about TCPA, Telephone Consumer Protection Act, by the way. So what's going on there, Tim? Seems like same old, right? New boss, same as the old boss. Isn't that the song for quoting old stuff?
Oh, yes, we're bringing the Who into this, but you could do worse. So TCPA, it's a funny thing. I will take you back 23 years ago. I'm trying to think when the federal DNC registry first came out, and I was scared out of my mind. I went in and I went to my managing broker, who also happened to be my mentor, and I said, "Do I need to look for another job? Is this the end of cold calling as we know it?" And he assured me that it wasn't. So what do we face now, TCPA in 2026? Well, I guess I would say, is it the end of cold calling as we know it? Well, kind of, but that doesn't mean that prospecting is going away. It just means that in today's environment, and this includes even just recent legislation in the last 6 months since the beginning of the year, there are things you need to do because there's more than ever, there are teeth in this legislation, teeth that have not been either actively enforced or there wasn't a lot of awareness around what could be done. So, what I want to tell you is there's absolutely a way to still continue to prospect under this, but there are certain things you should do to keep yourself safe and make sure that you're not creating a big problem for yourself. And, to that end, I really feel like we have a good roadmap of moving forward of how do we do this in this TCPA 2.0.
Yep, absolutely. And the penalties are real deal. It's 500 and 1,500 per violation. So you've got some auto texting blast thing going. Each text is a potentially separate violation. And if they are multiples to the same person, they can consider that egregious and up this if you get really nasty. So I know another large brokerage paid over $40 million in a settlement regarding unauthorized prospecting is what I'm going to call it. So this is a very, very dangerous slope to be on with TCPA. This is
John. I have a question. What would you do if you lost 6 months of your income like they did?
The retort to that joke is if I fell off your wallet, I'd die.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we go.
All right.
Die from the fall. But so TCPA is the real deal. It is here. It is out there, and you need trackable proof of consent. And this is defensible position all day. Okay. If we can slide forward one, please. So pre-2006, this is old school. Tim, talk about like what people were grinding on, multi-line dialer type stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different dialing technologies out there, parallel dialers, power dialers. But the one thing you need to understand, and this is one of the biggest changes for 2026, is that the legislators have come down and have essentially deemed all of that robocalls, which were already blacklisted before. But now we find ourselves in a situation. So last year, one of the technologies I was really excited about were AI voice clones. It allowed you to do sort of the voicemail version of mail merging and email. And I was really excited about the technology. And that loop, certainly in California, but I believe now it's nationally as well, that was shut firmly at the beginning of the year, where essentially you've come down and legislators have said, there's no human in the loop. It's a robocall. It doesn't work anymore. So as fast as that technology presented itself, the door shut hard on it. And I want people to be aware of that because there are still companies out there that are trying to push you technologies that do not fit into the new TCPA regime. So this whole idea of, I purchased scrub lists. Well, that's great, but there's no liability for the person that you bought it from. The fines are going to come to you, not them. Or voicemail clones or these automated voicemails. The door has been firmly shut on that, John. So technologies as recently as 6 months ago are not viable anymore.
Correct. And especially say it again on those pre-purchase lists, we guarantee they're scrubbed. They can guarantee whatever they want. Again, you're the one facing those fines. So what do we need to do? What we need to be sure of is that people are actually opting in. Yes, Tim, I want you to send me a market report. Yes, Tim, stay in touch about what's happening. We need that to happen, but you need to timestamp that. You need to date stamp that. You need to protect that information because that's your sort of get out of $1,500 fine jail card. Because without that, you're sunk. You're absolutely sunk. having opt-outs for canned spam act and email stuff, yeah, that's been there for years. I'm talking about direct voice contact. And this is super, super significant. Your CRM, because y'all are using a CRM, right? I saw Tim go bug-eyed there. Hey, but Tim, we do happen to know a secret, though. What is the best CRM in the world, Tim?
The one you will use is the
There
one
we
that
go.
I always say.
Same here. Agreed.
Oh, and by the way, if any of you dared to answer, of course, I have all my people in Excel. Don't ever say that.
No, that's not a CRM. It might be a database, but it's not even that really. It's data, but not a database.
It will not protect you when the fines come down if you can do a pivot table with your database, so it doesn't count.
Exactly. Can we get that in cornflower blue? Yeah. Just moved over to Fight Club with that reference for the color of his tie. He wanted the buttons on the thing to be that. But anyway, we digress yet again. So you absolutely have to be protected. And if you are, you've got a safe harbor. You can reach out. Absolutely. However, unless you're doing that and documenting that, you're putting yourself, your brokerage at risk. And I did a quick Google. There's well over 3,000 legal firms who are just chomping at the bit for you to bulk text people, for you to make calls that you should not be making, for you to break this. And it's not hard to do. You just have to get consent. So people go, well, but then Tim, I'm out of business. This seems onerous and horrible and terrible and all these other things. And it can seem that way, just as you thought DNC was the death knell of that, right? This is a far harsher step than DNC, to be fair.
It is, and I don't want to downplay it because it is a significant step forward. However, John, I really do think there is an upside to this. And the upside is, as people have talked about AI and other technologies, there's always a concern about disintermediation of a business. And that's not really where we find ourselves here. In fact, if anything, we're coming back to the human in the loop. That is the buzz phrase for TCPA 2.0 is human in the loop. And that's great because it means you have a significant and direct role to play. But let's give you a little bit of playbook. If we'll go to the next slide, we'll talk about prospecting in a TCPA world. The first thing is, and I know that there was some open invitation, so you might not have this tool at your fingertips, but if you are with eXp Commercial, you have Dial Safe. So John talked about purchasing a scrubbed list. We are not living in a world where you can take anybody at their word anymore. So why not just take advantage of something that's at your fingertips to make sure that you scrub your database so that when you're calling somebody, remember that you can call somebody that's not currently, like it's a safe number, and they can say, hey, I want you to take me off my list. But that first call wasn't a problem because they weren't there to begin with. What you don't want to do is go down the road with says, I've been told people to take me off your list 5 times or 10 times or 15 times and you guys keep calling me. You do not want to make that call. You're not going to talk your way out of that call. So please scrub your lists against Dial Safe first and foremost to make sure that you're not going to go step in it right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dial Safe, you can import and export. You can import a full CSV Excel file right in it. Click it, boom, it'll give you all the records scrubbed in seconds. It is in your advisor center, so you can go to it's in your links and advisor center on my EXP. You'll see it as well. Very easy to access, and then definitely integrate that into your life is what I tell you. Okay. And then your opt-ins, those who are like, hey, Tim, I'm on Do Not Call. Please call me anyway, which may come from marketing or prospecting efforts 3, 4, or 5. They go, hey, I know I'm on Do Not Call, but Tim, I'm giving you permission to call me. Cool. Can you do me a favor? Just confirm this text. Text me to confirm that or email me to confirm that I can reach out to you. So you need to absolutely maintain that opt-in record to protect yourself. Now, if anyone does any business or works in Europe at all, Europe has GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Rights, which are even far more onerous than anything we have here, where if someone doesn't opt in every 12 months to your database, you must forget them. You can't even keep them around for emails or anything. You have to literally scrub your whole database, not just phone numbers and not call them. So we are blessed, even though we have these things and they can be more challenging, they actually force us to be a better advisor, to be a better broker for them, because we need to make human connection with them a different way, right? Tim, this is back to what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can't let it get stale. I mean, John, if we just talk old school practicality for a minute,
Mhm.
when we've tried to help somebody reach the next level, somebody says, I want to go to the next level, I want to expand my business. Not everybody has the same problem, but I can tell you that the most common problem that people have when it comes to growing is their database is in shambles. Either they never built it properly at first, or they built a good database when they were new, and then they got busy and it got old. The one thing that, and this gets back to my silver lining of TCPA 2.0, not just human in the loop, but if you want to be a broker for the years to come, you can no longer afford to ignore your database. And that may sound in the short term like something else being added to your plate, but the upshot is that when you want to control your income, you want to grow, you want to grab more market share, you want to bring in a team and get them started right away where they don't have to do all the database and grunt work that you did. If you're trying to stay compliant, that will no longer be an issue for you. So there's huge upside to being sort of forced. It's kind of like going to your doctor and it says your cholesterol's super high, you got to do something to change it. Well, you probably should have done it anyway,
Yeah.
but now you have incentive to do it. So that's, again, I think one of the silver linings to
Sure.
what we're talking
Absolutely.
about here.
Well, just Tim, understand if your cholesterol is high, you just need a ton of salt to raise the blood pressure and blow all that cholesterol out of your veins. You'll be fine. Trust a plumber on this.
John, I don't know why you weren't a doctor. Okay, it's just
I don't
wisdom.
even play one on TV. Just saying. Okay. So we're going to talk a little about optimizing AI profiles and social medias. We got some stuff on that after this. But in-person visits. Let's talk about shoe leather for a minute before we get into the techie stuff. Talk about shoe leather. I mean,
oh man,
smokestack marketing and shoe leather work.
They really do. And it's, so remember, my friends, in prospecting, there are no silver bullets. Okay, the keys to good prospecting are do it at high enough volume, and I don't mean talking loudly. I'm talking about, enough touches, enough outreaches, and do it consistently. If you will do those two things, you don't actually have to be that great at the interaction. Just statistically, you'll get what you need. In-person visits, though, they're just underutilized, and there's one area I think where they really don't work that well anymore, and I don't even know if we have anybody on the call that would consider themselves in this area right now, but that would be your real true Class A office buildings. There's enough security in those buildings and things that you just can't walk in and do whatever. But in pretty much every other asset class, you can either go visit tenants, talk to them about owners, walk in, go to an industrial park where you have a cluster of people that you can visit. And yeah, there's a little bit of an art to the in-person visit, but one thing, and I'll bring this up. There was a gentleman who, long time, industry icon, and they had interviewed him because he happened to be the great grandson of J. Clydesdale Cushman. Okay? I don't have to tell you what firm he might have founded. It wasn't CBRE. And he said that when he used to visit his great grandfather, and Wakefield was his great uncle. He said, when I used to visit the brokers, he said they didn't, even inflation adjusted, they didn't make as much money as brokers do today because of technology. But the one thing that those brokers had was their neighborhood expertise was second to none. They knew every shopkeeper, every alleyway, everything.
Yeah.
Nothing escaped their knowledge base when it came to whatever they considered their farm area. And this was like 25 years ago. He's given this interview, and he says, I feel like we've lost some of our expertise. There are things you learn, John. I mean, forget about getting around TCPA for a minute. There are just things you learn about being about a market when you're in the field. Things that could be, let's say I go to an industrial park and I don't even see you, but I see, lots of cracking in the parking lot, or I see that, send out somebody and they go, oh, I tried to take a picture of the building, but tons of cars going by and I couldn't. I said, well, what did that teach you about the real estate?
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many ancillary benefits to in-person visits, but the more technological and the more detached this world becomes, I think you're going to see a rebound, a craving for just that human interaction.
Correct.
So sometimes in the face of tons of technology, going back to the roots is a part of the formula for success.
Absolutely. And let me talk about retail for a minute. If you're going to a little 5-unit strip center, hair, nails, pizza, ice cream, State Farm, whatever, like those hyper local businesses that are in those communities, walk in and support a local business, buy an ice cream cone and talk to them. Hey, cool. How's it going, Tim? Awesome. Well, it's a great spot here. You seem really busy. Is this enough? Do you need some more? Do we, there's other places? Do you want to shrink down? Like, how long is your lease? What's happening? These are people who are in business in your community. The other thing too is, in commercial, we tend to look at residential people sometimes with some suspicion when they want to dabble, as we call it, into residential or whatever derogatory phrase you wish to use. But understand this. If they sell $1 million house to a family, cool, a family has a place to live. If we sell $1 million factory, 40 people have a place to live. So we also, on the commercial side, can be an incredible source of referrals for our residential folks. And we should absolutely be working both sides of that relationship to go, hey, cool, that's awesome. Oh, you want to open a new location there? Great. Cool. And you're looking for employees who need housing and stuff? Great. I can pair you up with one of our EXP residential folks. You can work the commercial side. They work residential. Happy days. So there's so many cool things we can do there, tying into those site visits. Absolutely. Hey, I saw you putting awnings on the building, Tim. Looks great. That's a call that you're not going to get from Google Earth. If you want to Google Earth, do it.
Hey, cool. 6 months ago, I saw that there was a white truck driving by your property. Yeah, exactly. It's not a great interest generator. John, one of the things that I think sometimes somebody could be listening to this and say, okay, I get it, but I'm not really sure. Like, door knocking, if you will, has never really gone away in industrial. You mentioned retail, which I think more people should do, but it was kind of a dying art there. And then we talked about office. But with multifamily, one of the things that I always thought was kind of funny, as you know, I used to require all my new brokers, they had to drive their market, and they had to take at least one photo of every property that was going to be in their database. And they would always say, well, I'm not going to use that picture again, like they thought that the picture was for marketing purposes. Purpose was to teach them the market. But with multifamily, I was always thought it was interesting how people would be so sneaky. It's a click. I don't want anybody to know I'm taking a picture. When I go into multifamily property, I'm pretty open and notorious. And the reason I am is, and in fairness, my friends, I've been asked to leave properties too. So I mean, sometimes people will say, please don't take pictures of my property. You have to be willing. It's like my friend Mike Lipsy would say, there's a great correlation in this business to your success, to your threshold to embarrassment, right? So, but it's also led to plenty of wonderful conversations. Well, what are you doing? Oh, well, here's who I am. And that includes talking to tenants sometimes. And getting information. Quick story: one time I was on a property and I was taking pictures of it, and somebody came out and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm looking at this property. It was actually something that we were considering investing in." And he said, "Oh, you don't want this property?" And I said, "Really? Why?" And he said, "Well, let me tell you."
Oh, it's going to get good.
Yeah. He goes, "It floods every year." And he said, and I said, well, isn't that a grading issue? He goes, there's nothing you can do about it. He said, I don't know why, but the way this neighborhood was constructed, the way the streets are, all the water flows down onto this property. So, shy of building a levee around your property, you're going to flood every year. And I thought, thank you for that information. Yeah. But I wasn't going to find that on a data provider. I wasn't going to find it in the marketing package. Probably should have, but that's another story.
Closure.
But being there and being open and notorious, not pretending that I was just walking my dog by the property. So don't be afraid to let people know who you are and what you're doing when you're there.
Was that on Fairview and Downers Grove by chance? We actually ran into that same property. So when I think of it, just north of the tracks, west side of the street.
Yeah, there's a few. There's more than one.
Yeah. All right. All right, so let's move on to our next slide here so we can keep our segments going as we start transitioning into kind of our hybrid broker conversation. And yes, you can TikTok your way to some success in real estate for the comments. Tim will now demonstrate all 16 of the Fortnite dances in a row. Okay. Yeah, we don't need any more of that, Tim. We're good. Okay. Moving on.
This is a tough crowd.
Yes, it is. So we talk about, AI is going to replace humans. AI is going to replace humans. No, someone utilizing AI might replace you, but AI will not replace you as a broker. However, the key, Tim, if I look at all the tasks I do in a day, right? Where should I be focusing my time, and what should I try to solve with leverage? Adding my superpower of leverage. Like, where do I focus that versus my front end activity? What does that look like?
Well, it's interesting, John, that you asked that question. I don't know if you remember. You'd have to go back in your memory banks. And I didn't invent this either, but I always thought it was really good. And that was a broker's job fits on one hand. There's 5 things that make you money. Okay. Prospecting, which even if you hire team members that prospect a portion of your database that you're moving on from, that's fine. But there should always be something in prospecting for which you are responsible. Okay, so prospecting is one. Meeting face to face or potentially virtually in this world with clients. Okay, so client meetings. The third thing is anything that's going out under your banner needs your blessing. So even though I might have assistants or artificial intelligence or whatever do an underwriting or pro forma, an offering memorandum, whatever it is, if you don't put your eyes on it before it goes out, because nobody's going to go back and say, oh, your package was wrong, I guess I'll go sue Claude now, right? That's not how it works. Right?
Not happening, right.
So it's kind of like with the list, that ultimately the buck stops with you. So you have to approve and give your blessing to everything that's going out with your name on it. The fourth thing is solving problems. I used to have a colleague that said, if my deals don't die at least 3 times, I'm convinced they won't close, because they have to run into those obstacles. And that's your job, is to bridge the gap when those obstacles come up. And then the last thing is all the hard work you put into maintaining that client. As John mentioned earlier, don't orphan them. So you have to work to maintain a client for life. That is your job. Those are the things that make you money. So ultimately, when it comes to artificial intelligence and team members, if it's not one of these 5 things, your ultimate goal as a business person should be to not do it and have something else do it. So, I mean, I think the first thing is that I believe this is and always will be a human business, but you have to know how to leverage technology so that you don't get left in the dust.
Definitely. All right, let's move forward. Now we're going to have a lot of tech things. We're going to give you some very quick nuggets of, simply to make you aware of their existence, but we're not going to go deep into 15 different platforms. We want to show you some of the edge of where things are and what's happening. So that's why we're talking about sort of that prediction cycle. We talked about the rain, and this whole rain thing keeps coming up. I could either go to Blind Melon with no rain. We could go to It's Raining Men. We could go to Love Rain Over Me, and that's the Who, back to the Who with REIGN. So depending on how much rain we want.
This is the kind of game you and I would play like over a beer or something, is, how many songs can you name with rain in it? Yeah, we're weird, so.
It would have to be bourbon or a nice scotch, perhaps some lovely redbreast. But anyway. So let's
true Irishman with the redbreast.
Oh, it's going to be bad, yeah. So let's talk about how we raise this probability and this prediction cycle of what we're doing. The human is kind of the ultimate and final interface, but really using AI and the data and tools around that can help arm you to stay on those 5 tasks you should be doing. Okay. Right. So let's move forward 1 slide, please. So it's very easy. Number 1, don't buy shiny things unless you really think they're working, right? And there's so much shiny junk being thrown at us. The average real estate brokerage, and this was on the residential side, there was an NAR report on this from last year, the year before, that the average residential side brokerage gave their agents in the field something like 15 to 17 tools of tech somehow or another. People use 3 on average. Okay, so there's all kinds of shiny things fighting for your time and money and attention, and just try to keep it really skinny and simple. Okay. And cost effective all day. We'll talk about some plug and plays. And then when you want to get bougie, because Tim's pretty bougie over there, I'm pretty low key, but although I think I did have the Starbucks with the sparkles in it today. So I did drink a pretty bougie Starbucks. So maybe I'm in that wrong too. I don't know.
I had generic Safeway K-Cup this morning. So who's bougie? I'm just saying. All right,
you got me. All right. So let's talk about approaching those workflows a little differently. Can we slide forward, please? So the big hits, Tim, if you had $1.
Yeah, so I have the last couple of years, there's been such a call. I've done a lot of consulting and training on artificial intelligence. And one of the main questions I'm always asked is, well, which is the best model for me to use? And that the truth is that there isn't a best model. There can be reasons why you would want to use one over the other. And so let's just talk about that really, really quickly. Before I move ahead, I just want to say something about the first AI slide that we put up, which was using it for predictive purposes. We covered some of that, although in a more analog way with the CoStar that we showed you yesterday. There are systems out there, Prospect, Reonomy, there's a number out there that are now trying to integrate artificial intelligence for buying signals, selling signals, all of these things that indicate that there's something coming up. What I want to say about that is that, and this was on the slide, I just don't know if you got it, they're imperfect. It's just like when somebody says, well, a lot of data in CoStar or Crexi or whatever, it's not right. Okay, that's fine, but it's not completely wrong either. I mean, in some isolated cases, but overall, the idea with using prediction and predictive AI to signal some kind of decision making or potential transaction is just to give you a jumping off point for the conversation. It's no guarantee. It's just that if there is a huge obstacle to people picking up the phone, it is really that they don't know what to say, and they don't want to pick up the phone and say, "Hi, I see that you own the property on First Avenue. What are your plans with the property?" Now, I'd rather have you make that call than make no call at all. But that's what prevents people from doing more, is they just don't feel like they have something interesting to say. And that's with predictive, it can just, in my opinion, potentially raise the probabilities that you are calling somebody who's in the midst of decision making, but also give you something to talk about. And
Absolutely.
so, not a cure-all.
One thing I would definitely say also on this, if you're going, well, how do I leverage this in a simple, intelligent way? Get a premium version of whatever you're doing, but get a good one. The basic ones are fairly basic. Claude is fabulous as well. This isn't designed to be the showdown of all different showdowns, but whatever AI platform you use, have it interview you, then and then teach it. Spend the time, invest in teaching it. It will learn your voice in terms of your mannerisms, your speech patterns, and where you may use improper contractions when speaking that would never look great in an email, things like that, and the tone you take. But also then ask it, cool, hey, Tim, I do industrial commercial brokerage in the suburbs of Atlanta. I'm looking to find owners of, 16-foot and lower buildings, older gen, 3 gen, 4, old gen space, who I can maybe talk into redevelopment or subdivision or something. Give me some interest generators that I can use to help engage them. AI will help you with that. So if you're worried about what to say, it can also help you with that. It doesn't mean those are word for word perfect scripts, but it will get you past the resistance of, well, I don't know what to say to anybody. People have figured this out. And it almost doesn't matter what you say nearly as much as that you say something. Perfection is the enemy of done.
Yeah, I love that. You say that to me so often, and I've always appreciated it when that rolls off your lips.
Yeah.
As far as picking a platform, one thing that I would just quickly say to everybody is there's not some dramatic advantage that one has over the other. So there's a lot of personal preference involved. We did create this matrix to tell you a little bit about what some of the different models, at least in our experience, do slightly better than the others. One thing I always point out to people is that our business, I've learned in my career that the words simple and easy are not synonyms. What we do is relatively simple. We're not trying to figure out how to colonize Mars or land rockets in a platform in the middle of the ocean, but that doesn't make what we do easy. From a technological standpoint, though, there's not a lot that we do that any of these models couldn't do. So like if you say, well, I want to abstract a lease, well, they can all abstract a lease. They do have some relative strengths. I love the combination. I'm a heavy, and this is primarily for convenience because I have both a personal and a corporate Google Workspace account. So for me, using Gemini or a custom gem that I've created plus Notebook LM is a great 1-2 punch for me. Right. So there's not a good or bad here. I do, like I said before to people, if you have an advantage already, like people talk to me about Microsoft Copilot, that's fine. If you are in the Microsoft ecosystem, understand that Microsoft doesn't have their own LLM, by the way. It's the previous version of ChatGPT, white labeled for Microsoft. So it's understand what it is. And everybody who's out there saying, we've come up with our own special AI, basically, there's just these companies that have the resources and the wherewithal to create a true artificial intelligence engine. Almost everybody else is riffing off of this, or they're using Meta's model or something to create their own custom.
Right.
When I talked about the slide with 3 approaches, this is where you want to start. It's simple, it's cost effective. I am a big believer in always subscribing to at least their base level plan. That real world really tends to open up when you spend a couple of bucks.
Yep.
All my AI subscriptions together, I think I'm at like $82 a month. But when I think about the time I've saved, it's really nothing. It's really nothing.
And if I ever hear objections about, well, they want $8 a month, my quick retort is, how many streaming services do you have? And how much do you watch? All 68 of them, And so, you know what? Turn off the one you haven't logged into and get this, because which one's going to actually give you a return on your time and your money? So
there's been nothing, John. You and I've talked about this a lot, but there has been, in our careers, there have been very few technological inflection points that were truly what I would call game changers, and a phrase that is wildly overused.
yes.
And the CRM should have been one of them, right? Because it really was supposed to modernize. But you and I have talked about 35 years on from the introduction of common CRMs, people are still using it like a Rolodex 90% of the time.
An out-of-date Rolodex at that.
Right. So, that has coffee spills on it. The thing about AI is you're either using it or you're not. And if you're using it, it's going to provide benefits for you.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that we want. But this is where people start with the simple, cost effective. Now, I want to give everybody here listening a little bit of guidance. And I did see a comment, from some of my snarky people in California here who say that they are really surprised to hear they can't dance on TikTok and generate leads. Now, I'm just going to say this, Carl, you probably could, but it wouldn't be.
I didn't want to call him out by name.
I didn't want to. You probably could, but I don't know if I would recommend it as a strategy for anyone. Nothing but love for you. Okay. So what are we trying to accomplish here?
Let's slide forward, please.
It can be so overwhelming. You go to a seminar, you listen to something on AI, you see 50 things you think you would want to do. I really suggest that you approach it by asking yourself 2 questions, and this will tell you where to start with AI. The first question you got to ask yourself is, what is the bottleneck in my business? What's taking an inordinate amount of time? Or you might ask yourself, what do other people seem to be able to do so much faster than me? And that usually tells you where to start. And it may be solved with an $8 a month subscription. There are, however, as you can see on the screen, there's third-party plug and play solutions out there. The one thing that everybody wants there to be a Microsoft Office or a Google Workspace in AI. No such thing. There's 70, 80,000 companies out there. They come and go every day. It's still a very fragmented workplace. But there are tools out there that, depending on what your specialty, your discipline is, you may have an easy plug and play. That second to last one down there, Plod. I was telling John about this earlier. If I was still doing a lot of leasing and doing a lot of tours, I would have Plod, because it's a really an amazing tool. But even take that last one, WhisperFlow. So we talked about TCPA, and we talked about having a defensible position in your CRM. Well, one thing that happens in our busy world as brokers is we should be putting good notes into our database, but we got to run off to this meeting or run off to that meeting. In this particular case, WhisperFlow, any program you have on your computer that has a text box, you can now use WhisperFlow to just speak and have the notes go in. Awesome. So there's really, when it comes to being a modern broker, there aren't really any excuses anymore. If you don't have the right answers, it's honestly because you're not asking the right question. So you got to reach out to the people that might be able to help you. But there are definitely some things here. Now, I would say one more thing, if we can go ahead one slide. I hear this a lot, and it's software fatigue, where people say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so tired of switching systems. I was doing this and then I was doing that, and I'm so tired of learning something new." If you have the time and expertise with artificial intelligence, there are things out there, and the other people have security concerns too. But there are things where you can take a lot of your existing team architecture and use artificial intelligence tools like Zapier to think of it as plumbing, connecting the different systems that you have. And so one integration that I could tell you about was a team that wanted what they were asking their team to do is at the end of the week, put your stats in your team dashboard so that on our team meeting on Monday morning, we can see what everybody's done, what everybody's working on. Okay. Well, as you can imagine, oh, I had to leave early. I had this, I was going to a bachelor party. So what they did was set up a Zapier integration. Zapier already talks to like 8,000 systems out there. And they created this AI workflow. At 5 o'clock on Friday, everybody's stats are pulled out of the database and they were put over into their team dashboard so that nobody had to manually do that and nobody had any excuse. And it was, so that's, what I'm saying. It's pretty powerful if you want to do it. We're just planning, food for thought, want to make sure we got that out there, but we still have lots of stuff to cover. So
Absolutely. The other thing, Diego, you said you signed a $6 million listing from TikTok. The TikTok got you the awareness. Your skill as an advisor is what got you the listing. So absolutely in favor of socials for that. Build your presence. Love it. Congrats. It is awesome. But at some point, you have to sit across from an owner and they have to decide, am I going to hire you? Because I'm going to answer those fundamental questions, Tim, which someone wisely told me way back when, which is what can you do for an owner they can't do for themselves? And what can you do that someone else can't do better or more cost efficiently? Right. Unless you answer those two questions, you will be replaced in the transaction or you're never even going to get hired to have a shot at it. You answered those two questions successfully. You built competence and awareness through your social channels. But at some point you sat across and said, here's my value prop. Let's go. An awesome job on that. Congrats.
Very well. And in keeping with the spirit of the joke, it also probably wasn't a dance.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We haven't seen proof yet, Tim. Hold up. Okay, I don't want to peek early. Right?
I'll suspend judgment there.
Suspend judgment. All right, so let's move forward, please, sir. Now, I will have to make a call out here. Chad Massacre, one of our advisors and mentors from Florida, wrote a really cool article about how to sort of inherit and own your AI presence out there, because we all have one. There's a presence for all of us out there. But what messaging are you putting there and how are you being present across all the platforms consistently? So if someone goes, hey, who's the best industrial broker in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for $50,000 and under, or 50,000 square foot spaces, you want to be the person that comes up if that's your world. So absolutely. This is a great article. So I want to thanks to Chad for putting this together for us. Great one. Okay. So thank you, Advisor Chad. So Tim, we are 3 out of 4 topics kind of done so far. Now it's sector shootout time. And I always love this because you and I could riff on sectors all day. But,
yeah.
But as we're turning the corner into topic here. So what are you seeing out there? I mean, this is an interesting one. Let's talk about some drivers and some things we see coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we should probably just take them one by one. So Sarah, what do we have up first in the next slide?
Multifamily.
Oh,
nope. Well,
we have industrial. Okay. Yeah, John, I mean, look, the industrial sector is all over the news, right? So we don't want to tell people things they already know. I mean, the fight for data centers and water and power and all those things. I mean, we know who owns the future. And there are still, I mean, e-commerce, maybe we got a little bit overbuilt, got a little out over our skis, after the pandemic with a little bit too much last mile space and things of that nature. But that's not going away. And, I mean, even here, I moved to basically the middle of the El Dorado National Forest, and my wife has discovered that you can actually still Amazon will deliver to our little middle of nowhere ranch. So, it's here to stay. The big thing that I think for a lot of people on this call is with industrial, you have AI, the physical side of it is that there has to be the brain somewhere doing the heavy lift. And this is where we get into the data centers. Data centers have huge power requirements, they have huge water requirements. Um, there is a lot of NIMBYism when it comes to data centers right now. If you're not familiar with the acronym of NIMBY, it's not in my backyard, and it's the typical backlash that you get. I'm a little bit more favorable to what we as planners, my undergrad was in city planning, of banana. John, have you ever heard banana? Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything.
Wow.
So that's
That Gwen Stefani song just comes back to me. This is bananas, banana. I'm sorry.
so so there's a lot of bananaism out there. But one thing I would tell all of our advisors to be aware of, the data center market, if you have 700 acres out there, more power to you. But it's really more of the ancillary, the spillover that creates synergy around this, what's happening. But I know you are really good at industrial, John, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, really, it's data centers are now becoming their own segment outside of industrial. It used to be industrial subset data. Now industrial is their own thing because building it, floor loads, water, air, gas requirements, everything is so different than a typical 100,000 foot high bay warehouse that really it's moving into a whole new world. CoStar, our data partner, did a phenomenal deep dive into them in April, May. And you can go through the CoStar training calendar, look it up, watch it, and review. Fabulous deep dive and just how different it is. But if you want to look at scale and scope, I live in sort of the center of Pennsylvania, Pennsyltucky, I call it happily, and I do love me some Pennsyltucky. Some of you of a certain age may remember a thing called 3 Mile Island, which was sort of the worst nuclear disaster in U.S. history, right? We don't get credit for Chernobyl or Fukushima. However, that's a little ways away. They're turning it back on. Microsoft signed a deal with Constellation Energy. They're literally rehabbing and turning the reactor one back on, retrofitting it from the 70s when it shut down, and putting a data center at the outlet of it. That's the kind of money that's behind this. So if you have a true data center ready property, great. Other industrial is still doing great. There's some space overhangs in places where people signed perhaps longer term leases during the end of COVID than they maybe needed. And now there's some space overhang. So industrial is great, but there's data centers going up that are larger than the state of Connecticut, planned in Texas. So think about the scale of that. It's a different world. Okay. Let's move forward one, please. Multifamily. I do have to throw one quick riff on multifamily. Interestingly, the act that was just passed into law by President Trump talked about institutional investors in the like building single family homes to keep them as rentals, right? BTRs, the build to rents, and Blackstone and huge capital groups are building thousands and thousands of these homes. New thing came in now, by the way, just passed into law that if they have over 350 units, they cannot build single family the same way. They can't build to rent the same way. There's caps on that that'll be phased in. So what you are going to see, I think, is larger institutional folks build more actual multifamily buildings than build to rent single family homes. So they're talking about 42,000 units were pulled from the planning books once this law is kicked into effect. So that may be a very interesting ripple effect on the single family housing and single family investment market when institutional owners cannot get in with the same heavy hitting weight they did over the past years. So it's going to be a fascinating thing to see that impact. That is separate of this. Tim drew up his sort of game of risk on the United States with this. So talk about your multifamily dynamics.
This is Stratego, right?
Stratego. I love that. The guy with the bomb and the spy.
Right? Oh,
I love
man,
this.
we're so old.
Yeah.
Anyway, multifamily is just a fantastic product type for so many reasons, and not the least of which is the fact that you can shield more income because of more aggressive depreciation, even just on a straight line basis. We are seeing the Sun Belt story, that's old. It hasn't gone away, by the way, but it's also old. What we're seeing though in these traditional Rust Belt markets and things is that they've got a couple of great things. Number one, climate resilience, but they're very stable markets. They're not booming, but they're not crashing. And there's a big thing that they have that sometimes we struggle with out west, and that's water. You get a lot of moratoriums out west because there just simply aren't the water resources to do it. So there isn't necessarily when we talk about Sun Belt and then, Rust Belt up into New England, these are good parts of the country for just inherent reasons to the geography. As far as multifamily, the reason I'm so bullish on it as a product type and continuing to be such a darling of the industry is multifamily checks a lot of boxes. John alluded to legislation earlier in the year, which I think is absolutely true, and the effect that it'll have on apartments. And I would encourage you, if you're interested in that, to go look for more information about that legislation and the effects. But the other thing is that multifamily, when we talk about solving the housing crisis and affordability of housing, it's a very difficult and complex topic. But one of the things that helps solve a lack of housing is density. And I know that people don't love density. Everybody's great for density as long as it's not close to them. But
Banana.
yeah, right. Bananas and NIMBYs, right? But here's the deal. It is a way to more efficiently utilize the resources that we have. It's just that simple, especially in metro areas where, yes, we have huge swaths of the country that are basically empty, the flyover states as they've called them before. Density has to play a role in this. But here's the real takeaway, I think, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly in terms of who I think is on this webinar today. If you're at all like me, I've done some institutional work, but it is not the bread and butter of what I've done in my career. Mostly been private client. I love the B&C stuff because they're not building it anymore. You can't afford to build it. I mean, but before you get to shovel ready, I mean, I know I'm in California, so we're a little bit of an outlier. The money that it takes to just get something shovel ready, you have to get these enormous rents, or it doesn't pencil for what you have to pay for the land and the entitlement process. So when you have something that's B and C, you inherently think of it as like a bubble around that asset class that nobody can really penetrate because the economics don't make sense anymore. So I just think it's a wonderful time. I know I'm sounding all super optimistic and rose-colored glasses, but I would challenge people to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, well, and I look at the overall focus is you look at Gen Z, Gen beyond, I mean, even Y, Z, beyond, millennial and beyond, really, they're not going to work at the same company for 40 years, get the gold watch and retire. There's a lot more gig work where they need to be mobile a year at a time and 2 years at a time to move around the country. So the drive in the workforce is towards shorter term housing, and that 30-year commitment on a mortgage to a job they're only going to have for a year is scary. So you're seeing a huge semi-permanent class of renters who don't aspire to home ownership because it's not congruent with their lifestyle.
Well, that, and they also, so much of our worldview is shaped when we're children, and when they were children, their parents were losing homes. Yeah, right. I mean, so that left an impression on them. But the one thing that often comes up at a practical level, John, and I know we need to move on to the other product types here, but really quickly, earlier on we talked about people making capital decisions and things like that, and just the only thing I would say about that is when we talk about the bullishness of multifamily, and people say, well, great, that's why I'm not selling, right? I'm holding on to this because it's a great product type. But it gets back to what we said an hour ago, which is if the market's going up in a stock, would you rather own 10 shares or 100 shares? So redeploy that equity into your product type that has excellent long-term prospects.
Absolutely, and let's touch quickly on retail and office, just because we can. We've got a few minutes here before we move into kind of our putting the bow on this, if you will. So when I look at office, everyone's doom and gloom. Everyone's, oh my God, office. There's areas of the country that do not have any Class A office, and they're building new. I'm talking Raleigh Triangle. You talk areas of Texas, areas in Florida. It's amazing seeing that bifurcation of market. However, understanding in a lot of Class A, sort of the downtown tower stuff, the next occupant of that property very well may be a bulldozer. And the same with Class C in the suburbs, scattered little office complexes, because they don't lend themselves to anything else. Everyone's like, oh, do office to residential conversion. Those floor plates do not align to that. And by the time you put enough water, air, gas, elevators, and stairs, who wants the 5 inside units with no windows that won't appraise as bedrooms? Because they have no natural light. So these floor plates really don't lend themselves to that in many cases. So there's a very low probability of that actually being convertible. So office, it's not done. It's going to be, there's more pain to come on that one for sure. But overall, it's interesting, the stability. The thing I saw, like I met one of my attorneys, stopped by her office yesterday in Philly, and she just took the high floor above 30 floor. She took the whole floor, cut a 10-year lease. She had been in almost 2.5 times that space, but shrunk down to half the space. But the finishes are insane. Mm-hmm. So a wicked high TI for a small plate. And they went, if I'm going to be here, I want to be really nice while I'm here. Instead of going, we're going to have bullpens and hot desk and all that. So there's a flight to quality on build out, even if they're not taking as much of a footprint.
Yeah, they're in many cases, the flight to quality narrative is people are not reducing their real estate spend, but they understand that if I have 50 full-time employees, but my occupancy, to borrow a term from hospitality, if my occupancy is more like 25 per day, then I'm going to build out an exceptional space for 25 people, because that's all I'm ever really going to have at any one time. And that's, I think, what's pushing a lot of the flight to quality. John, one of the best aspects of our relationship over the years has been our willingness to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to say one thing that's counter to the main narrative that's out there in office right now. There was an article that came out in the New York Times this morning, and it talked about the effects of people not going to an office, so and how it really has not improved our lives. So that there are things that we have gained from it, but there's also things we've lost. And the article doesn't suggest going back to 2019. But what it does suggest is that there is some benefit for people increasing their physical connection to their coworkers, their colleagues, their clients. And so from the standpoint of the BNC office, like you said, I don't think it dies. I think that people are opening up to really the idea that it's good to get into an office at least a few days a week, at least a couple days a week.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And so let's pivot over to retail using a COVID word, pivot. You talked about unprecedented pivot and, game changer.
Or from friends, pivot.
Yeah, there you go. Pivot tables. We did cover those. Retail, to me right now, that little neighborhood retail, like a strip center, 10,000 feet with 1,500 to 2,000 foot units. Again, hair, nails, pizza, State Farm, Salt Caves, whatever. No advocacy for State Farm. We don't get paid by them. But basically delivering everything to a very local community that doesn't come in an Amazon truck or a big brown truck, absolutely on fire right now. And that is some of the hottest assets to own, because it's all the benefits of multifamily in terms of diverse income stream without the drama of toilets, tenants, and trash, and one of those three always being wrong at your buildings. Now you have the nuances of retail tenants. And as an industrial guy, I always was like, I like industrial better because it's a retail building without all the noise of those people. It's just an empty box. But that retail is an interesting game now. What are you seeing there, Tim, on sort of that like bigger sort of regional center power mall stuff versus say grocery anchor? Like what about that stuff?
It's what you said. It is in many sense the backlash against e-commerce. Enough of us have been disappointed with the buying the thing on Temu that, showed up and was dramatically, everybody's had that experience.
Yeah.
And so the brick and mortar, the physical experience has had a significant resurgence in popularity, then which also helps all those little inline tenants because people show up. Like I went somewhere the other day and my daughters love gelato, and there was a gelato place and they're begging me for gelato. Well, I didn't even know that place was there, except that I went over here because I wanted to have a brick and mortar experience. And so no, retail's great. And it's also far more intricately tied now to industrial than it ever has been before, because merchandising in these stores needs to be reflective of what you can do, but you don't have the capacity to have everything on hand. But how quickly can you fulfill it? And so that interplay between the two is really, really strong. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of bad to say about retail, except what I've always said over the last 3 decades, which is retail exhausts me. Because one day this retailer's the hottest thing, and the next day this retailer's the hottest thing. Like I get whiplash when I think about retail mix. But that aside, it's doing well.
Well, and it was, micro gyms are hot. Then all the burger joints are hot. Then all the macaron places are hot. You know what I mean? And you see those trends come and go. Wahlburgers and then Five Guys and Shake Shack came up. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, now we need macarons to go with all of that. And the cupcake joints popped up. So you see these hot concepts come and go. And, that happens in retail. I just don't want to be a mall owner. That's for sure. You can only convert so many of them to senior living and think you're getting away with it. And they
Right.
don't work well going to industrial because they can't handle the floor loading, the clear height, and the truck docking for cross docking.
Yeah.
So,
although Chad is right in the comments, I shouldn't have bought anything on Temu in the first place. So
that's true. That's
a fair
true.
point.
I think of it sort of like the movie Spinal Tap when they wanted Stonehenge on stage. I'll let you YouTube that. Okay. So we'll just leave it at there. Thank you, Chad, for that one. So Tim, we got about 10 minutes left. We're going down to the end. We're certainly loving the questions, the interaction. We appreciate you being here with us. Let's talk about what does it mean for 2026? What do we do with all this now? Right? Where do we go? What do we do?
Well, my friends, one thing I have learned too is that as human beings, this isn't a knock on anybody, but we only have so much capacity to integrate change at one time. And so we want to give you a roadmap. We hope that this time has been wonderfully productive, that you have pages of notes of things that you'd like to do differently. But you got to pick somewhere to start. And while we think that all 4 of these vectors, it's not a priority of 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. But if I had to give you my best advice, it would be 2 things. Number 1, focus on TCPA compliance first and foremost. Protect what you've built. And that's where I would start. If you're not firing on all cylinders there, that's where your efforts need to be right away. After that, I would suggest that you start integrating a little bit of technology. But remember that as cliche as it is to say that this is a marathon and not a sprint, I would also say this about that. So if it comes down to how you integrate technology into your business, start small, solve a problem and habituate that, make it a reality, and then do something else. If you come up with 12 strategic directions right now, I can darn near promise you will not do any of them. And that's not a knock on you. That's just human nature.
Yep. Well, how do you eat an elephant, Tim?
In one fell swoop and hope you don't choke. No, I'm sorry. One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, right? It's the old one out there. But the other part is if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
Yeah.
So if you're running around scattered, your results are going to be there.
Fair.
And you hit on this earlier, which is success in real estate is really boring. That's what they don't tell you. It's boring. It's doing the same thing over and over again. And it's not complicated. It's just hard.
Yeah.
And it's doing the same thing over and over again until your name has earned you enough to where people find you because you're you. And then you've piled up enough money to do what you want to do with the rest of your life. It's not complicated. Just keep doing it and it works. The sausage grinder works, okay? But really be intelligent and focused in how you're approaching those assets. Can we move forward, please? So absolutely, like Tim talked about here, TCPA, absolutely. If you have challenges, you're like, how do I do this? Where do I go to? Reach out to your managing broker. They can help you walk through this. Reach out to broker ops admin. We can help you walk through this. Definitely protect yourself because those fines are no joke. Be aware of how to protect yourself. We talked about the debt stuff, and it's not as much a wall. It's a more of strategically finding the leaks in the wall. How's that, Tim? Do we go back to our plumbing thing again?
Yep.
And to the question on that. So definitely focus on that, but really start with one thing and just do it and slowly go. There's no problems, just opportunities. Absolutely. And understanding that in your market. The other part is, issues can be resolved. Surprises kill deals. And so what Tim talked about earlier was asking better questions all the way through the process. The truth always comes out one way or the other. Okay. So ask better questions along the way. Leverage AI to help you with that. And what I would say is really hyper focus your prospecting, because if you are concerned or you have call anxiety or whatever that might be, just understand before you reached out, before you picked up the phone, before you send a message, you can help everyone you talk to one way or another. Now, you may be helping them to decide to use a different broker because they're not the right person for you, because firing people is fun sometimes. But if you don't come with that mindset of, hey, I can help, I'm bringing value, then eventually, again, you're not doing for them what they can do for themselves or doing it in a better way, you will eventually be replaced. If you show up with all the sniff of motivated self-interest and not of their best interests ahead, you will be replaced. And you should be, because it's not why you're there. You're not there to put yourself ahead of their interests. It's sort of like the people who would, hang around for years and years saying, I'm a commercial broker, I do this, I do that. And these are people who are financially out of business, but can't really do the math to determine they're out of business, but they can calculate a certain percentage of a large number in seconds without a calculator because they know how much they're going to get paid on a deal. Those are the folks who need to just start taking action, in a granular way. Tim, what have you got there?
I loved the comment there. There are no problems, just opportunities.
Absolutely.
And in a very, very obscure reference, it reminds me of Kevin Flynn in the original Tron. No problems, only solutions.
Only flu. I was just going to say this goes straight
An
up to
obscure
Tron.
Journey song, only solutions.
Yep,
Love
absolutely.
Journey, Bay Area heroes.
Yep,
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope
absolutely.
you've taken something away from it. I know we've saved a couple of minutes, haven't we, for our
Yep.
illustrious Sean Murphy?
Yep. Can we move forward, please? Because I want to introduce our SVP of Growth, Sean Murphy, who I believe is backstage with us right now. So, Sean, can you talk to us a little bit about what you do here?
Need to turn off the mute. Sorry.
There we go.
I'm never playing Trivia Pursuit with either of you. So just so you know, you guys can go on the floor or, you know, the show, any of the trivia shows. I'm never doing that with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on. I had 3 interesting conversations this week with 3 of our top influencers. Big guns, Randy Bird, Kurt Shewell, Jay Nelson, who are all moving into the commercial space. If you watched Bitcoin when it was 85 cents and $1.20, you didn't move on it. There wasn't enough information. You waited patiently and cautiously by the side. These guys don't wait. These guys see the trend right now. So they're moving and recruiting to commercial because we have an opportunity. And I think Wendy Forsyth, our new chief operating officer, she is focusing on this too. We have 83,000 people that you do not have to have TCPA permission to send messages to. And those are the residential real estate agents. Our chairman of our National Agent Advisory Council, Michelle Polly, in April closed $14 million in volume, all residential real estate agent referrals. Paul Frank, he gets several referrals every single week. If you know how to pick up a phone, it's easy. Hey, Tim Rios, this is Sean Murphy. I'm hyper focused on commercial real estate. And likewise, I see that you're doing excellent in residential real estate. Can we sit down and come up with a plan where we can both benefit? Because when I run into residential real estate agents, I'm probably not the best sponsor for them. And I'd love to co-sponsor with you. Likewise, when I run into a home in Folsom, California, I'm probably not the best person to represent that home seller. So I'd like to work out a referral and attraction program with you. This is 100 to 1 or more opportunity. There are 100 residential real estate agents for every single commercial advisor at EXP. Business brokers, you can triple that number. And just so you know, residential real estate agents are not allowed to do business broker transactions at EXP. So I want to help you build. I realize you're not into agent attraction. So I want you to come up with the top couple of people that you know that do residential or commercial real estate. Contact me. I'll immediately get on the phone with you and I'll tell you what the plan and what the script is and how you can, it's a sit down. It's a yes or a no. The people that succeed in attraction, like Rob Campbell, who's our number 1 attractor in commercial, who just started a commercial team. So watch out, Nashville. He's going for the team. He's going for big scores. Rob's got about 1,500 people. And he will tell you time on task over time wins every time. He gets 1,000 no's for every yes. But I will tell you, a commercial real estate agent makes twice as much money for the company, which means twice as much revenue share for you. And they stay almost 3 years. That's average. That's new guy, didn't make it, new girl, kind of made it, and old veteran who's been here forever. The average is almost 3 years. So you have a very stable, high income earning person in your revenue share downline. My job's to build the company. I am not in competition with you. I'm here, John's here, Tim's here to help you close these people. We want to help build your leveraged income. Every Tuesday, we are going to be running a commercial growth hour. Drop on in, ask us our questions. I used to do this in residential realty when Amy and I built it up to 87,000 people. Every week we would meet for an hour, and you can just drop in, ask your questions, say, I got a guy. You can all be from New Jersey. I got a guy. So you got a person, you don't know what to do. You give me their name, their email address, and your email address. I will set up the meeting with you. I'll set up the meeting with them. I'll ask them their pain points. You can maintain your professional relationship. They say, no, Sean, forget it. Pound sand. I'm not coming. I don't want it to affect your relationships. Likewise, I'll show you how to get referrals out of residential real estate agents. They can't identify a situation where you could make a ton of money. They hear my dad wants to move to a bigger warehouse or expand his restaurant, and they dismiss that the same as if my daughters go into a prom. I don't care. So they just dismiss it. They don't hear the key words that I am so sick of tenants. I can't stand changing toilets and fixing carpets. They don't know to say, hey, we could move you into a triple net lease situation where it's completely hands off. You just collect checks. They don't know to say that. So I want to tell all of you, the desk is open. John and Tim and I are here all times. Hit us up on the hub. The hub is where you can find us. I'm at Sean Murphy on the hub. He's at John Letourneau and at Tim Rios on the hub. If you go to the hub, you have a daisy chain of text, so you have proof. B, you can call us. You can video us. You can send text messages. You can see when we read them. So you can say, I see that you read it. I can see right there your little head you poked in. You're ignoring me. So you know. So get us on the hub. I think there's a couple more slides here. I just want to be sure to thank Tim and John for magnificent this is just the first one, John, because you had hundreds and hundreds of people here. Yep. One of many many operational summits where we're going to need to break it down even more. I learned from my sponsor, Dan Beer. He goes, I don't want to hear go out and lead generate. I want to know who writes the copy, who orders the paper, how much does it cost to print it, how much does it cost to distribute it, where does the phone call come when it comes back in. I want the details. And that's what you guys are doing. You're giving them the details. Yep. My last thing is get onto the global referral platform. There are only 439 of you on the global referral platform, and some of our biggest agents. If I was going to list a hotel in Phoenix, or let's say Prescott, I would call James Mang. That's what he does. He does hotels in Prescott, but he doesn't have Prescott listed as one of the cities he works in. I'm throwing that out there. But like you guys need to specialize. You look at Paul Frank, who's doing development and quick serve restaurants and mentor of the year. He's very specific, though. James Meng's very specific, though. Michelle Polly, she does indoor, outdoor industrial storage, which is great because you are now the single point of contact for 83,000 people. If you're a generalist, you are just like 400 other people. They can't discern who you are. So get specific. If you want to get rich, you better find your niche. If you need to know how to do that, there's a guy called the Church Guy. He's so popular in AI, Dan Klatt, that you can just type in the Church Guy and he'll come up. If you type in, I need to sell a church, he comes up ahead of CBRE, JLL, Avison Young. He's so recognized as the Church Guy, and that's because he's doing what these guys said, optimizing AI. Get small. You can still do other stuff, but get small to get big. Do we have one more slide there, Sarah?
We have one more on ComCon. Yep.
There we go. So ComCon, that is the EXP commercial convention. This one's going to be magnificent. It's in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. I went to high school there. We'll be at the Salt Palace. We have a day dedicated to the commercial convention, commercial keynote speakers. All of our leadership will be there, commercial breakouts. We have something very special that John and I are working on. We have a stage in our ultra nice commercial lounge where we are going to do our breakout sessions over the 2-day period. But we're going to have our commercial convention. It's going to roll right into, yes, after our commercial convention, because we take priority, we will roll right into the entire convention's keynote speaker. So we will do our convention, we will do some breakouts, and we will roll directly into Gary V, the keynote speaker for the event. So we're the kickoff for the whole thing, guys. So get signed up. We are ahead. Just found out from Sarah. Sarah's our producer, by the way. She's also one of our marketing people.
Sarah.
She's awesome. Just found out from Sarah. We are ahead of last year at the exact same time. So we have more advisors signed up right now for Salt Lake City than we did for Miami last year at the same time.
Hey, Sean, what happened to Miami? Who came and visited us in our room? The guy who worked for the city, some kind of an official. What was that guy?
Oh, yeah. Well, last time the fire marshal came and kicked us out and shut us down. So
we had too many people there.
We had a room for 400 people and we had 1,000 people register. So we don't want to make that mistake again. I think we got I think the room we have actually will expand if we need it to.
Yep.
But yes, stand by for more information, keynote speakers, and what we're going to put out an agenda for EXP ComCon. But it is a Delta hub. It is in the middle of the United States. So it's going to be ultra easy for everybody to get in there. I just checked flights, super cheap, a lot cheaper than South Beach, Miami. So I look forward to seeing you all there. And with the new hub, you don't need to know our email address or our phone number. You just type in Sean Murphy, or no, type in Tim Rios for everything. Is that what we agreed, John?
Yeah, we'll just keep him busy. We're good.
Yeah. TIM.RIOS.
It's all, it's fine. I'm sitting here.
Tim Rios,
I got the hub open right now.
All complaints.
All compliance right to Tim.
All of the congratulations and adulations go to Sean Murphy and John Letourneau. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Sean, for that. And one thing I do want to say too about EXPCon, if you're going, I don't know, I want to go, I don't know. You should absolutely get the top 10, 20, 30 individual and residential individual and groups or teams who are coming, one-on-one interview with them and go very simple conversation. Hey, Tim, I see you're rocking it in California. I'd love to interview with you for the opportunity to represent all of your commercial referrals. Can we have a cup of coffee at ComCon? Turn this into an absolutely targeted
4,000 handshakes.
Yeah, 4,000 handshakes there. So this is, besides our networking internal, we're going to have sessions for office, industrial, retail, multifamily, hospitality, prospecting, all kinds of tech stuff. We have so much content. Go there with that mindset of prospecting, reaching your hand across there and getting all the residential referrals you can. So this should absolutely be a focus moneymaker for you. Okay.
And somebody put in, how can you reach us on the hub? The hub's super easy. On the left-hand sidebar, there is a directory. Yep. If you start typing in our names will come up. Perfect. And you can start typing in John space LE and he'll just pop up. Tim Rios will just pop up. So at that point, you click on that and it gives you the option of calling us, videoing us, or just sending us a text message.
Yep, absolutely. Or if you need to email, you can email his first name, last name at expcommercial.com, like John.Letourneau or Tim.Rios, and Sean. What's your
No, Sean.Murphy at EXP Commercial.
Okay, cool. We've got more than one Sean Murphy running around.
I will say this really quickly. My EXP Commercial is Timothy.Rios, which makes me feel like I'm in trouble with my mother, but that's okay.
Love it. So we want to thank you all for joining us today. I know, it's an hour and a half of your time, a few minutes over. I appreciate your patience and your grace as we work through this. If there's anything I can do, the brokerage op team, growth, our managing brokers, anything we can do to help support you in your career, please let us know. If you're not with the EXP Commercial right now, Sean can help with that. We've got a great platform for you. Would love to chat with you about that. Other than that, let's hit our extra.
We had 2 people migrate over today.
There you go. And we'll see you all on the next one. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.